Hey everyone, we're here at the Transition Spur. This is going to be my final review on the bike. I did do a first ride impression, so you can check that out. But for this final review, let's get on the trail and see how this thing rides. All right, so this is the 2022 Transition Spur. It was an X01, but I changed the wheel set, went to the Industry 9 24-hole carbon wheel set that's super light, and then Magura MT7 brakes with 180 mil rotors front and rear, and that was actually lighter than the G2 RSC brakes that come on this bike, and they're way stronger. I really like Magura brakes. And then race face Next SL cranks, so super light cranks. I was gonna do XX1 but couldn't get any, so yeah, that's kind of the build on this bike. And now let's get into how this thing climbs and descends and all the fun stuff. Okay, so we are on the climb, headed up. This bike, right away, it is an amazing climber. I think this thing is one of the best climbers that I've ever rode. I haven't rode anything this light before though, so I will say that. I made this bike super light. This thing is just super efficient, and you don't even have to be locked out. I have been locking it out on longer rides, but overall climbing on this thing is pretty dang good. To me, I didn't expect it to be as good of a climber as it is, and then like it's just super solid. Like I expected it to be good, I expected it to be efficient, but this bike is just the bike to me that has pushed me to go on longer rides while I was out in the middle of a ride. And I was like, oh, you know, I can actually add kind of a second loop to this ride because I have gone so far in a shorter amount of time than it's taken on, you know, any other bike. So in that sense, this bike, I think, absolutely pushes you to just get more miles. And it's not even like, for me, it wasn't even planned extra miles. It was just, I was having a blast and enjoying riding more often. All right, here we go down Flow Trail. And honestly, like a bike like this bike is such a blast on a trail like this. It is so poppy and just is so easy to get in the air because of how light it is. It just is super fun. Or if you want to like kind of try to go faster on stuff like this, you're able to soak this stuff up pretty well too with this bike. I will say there's a pretty big creaking noise. I don't know if you can hear that in the video or not. Hopefully not, honestly, but if you can, that was the headset. The headset when I got this bike was super tight, so I don't think it was a problem from Cane Creek, because this is a Cane Creek headset, but I'd say more so from just the way the bike was built. But yeah, anyways, gosh, it is blinding out here, but this bike is just super nimble, super fun. I will say though, it is kind of more nimble than I expected it to be, in not the greatest way. Meaning, like, going into a corner, you have to be pretty dang on it, and I feel like you can let the front end kind of knife on you real easy. So one like small negative spot for this on the descent, which I didn't expect, because I expected this bike to be more of like a trail feeling bike on the descent than a cross country, which I think that's kind of more of a cross country kind of feeling. Okay, so it's about 100 degrees out this evening, so I'm not going to be doing any timed runs up, because if I were to time it compared to other bikes, it just wouldn't be quite fair, because the other bikes it was a lot cooler out. But this bike really is a good climber. I have no doubt that I would probably be about 30 seconds faster at least on my time portion of the climb that I've been using. Obviously, wrapping this climbing portion up, I mean, it's gonna be, this bike is a pretty dang amazing climber, as I've already said. Okay, let's jump into the numbers real quick. This is a size medium. It has a 455 millimeter wheelbase. A size large has a 480 millimeter wheelbase. Sorry, size reach. I'm talking about reach right now. But the chain stays across all sizes are 435 millimeters. The wheelbase on this size medium is 1190. But yeah, now let's get into talking about how this thing does. So, like I was just talking about, this this head tube angle is 66 degrees, and I'm not saying that's steep, but it's definitely not slack. And Transition does not want you to put a 130 millimeter travel fork on it, which I think would be really good. This bike gets kind of upset way sooner than you would expect. Way sooner than I expected when I bought this bike. But I didn't buy this bike to be a downhill bike, obviously. You should not be doing that. But I kind of thought this bike was going to be more of a trail bike than what it is. I would say it's more cross country than trail. I'd say it's like 60% cross country, or even 65, and about 35 to 40% trail, which that is kind of different than I was expecting. So yeah, it's definitely a cross country or trail bike, not like an enduro rider's trail bike, if that makes sense. So this bike, for where I live, Boise, Idaho, is just about the perfect bike for the foothills, which are a lot of trails kind of like this, you know. It's got some rocks in it, not a crazy amount, but it's very sandy, pretty fast. This trail obviously is not super fast. This is at the bike park, Eagle Bike Park. But anyways, so it's just what this bike does well is surprises you on the climbs. If you're a person that values a bike, like when you get on it and you climb it and you're expecting it not to climb as well, and then it climbs better, this bike would be for you. If you're a person that values a bike when you hop on it and it descends better than you expect, I don't know if this bike is really for you unless you are a cross-country person. I think cross-country riders would absolutely love this bike if they were looking for something a little bit more trail oriented. But if you're a trail rider or enduro rider or whatever that wants something a little bit more cross country but without giving up too much downhill performance, I don't know if this is really for you. There's a lot of other 120mm travel bikes out there. Might not climb quite as good as this, but they will climb close to as well, and then outperform this quite a bit on the descents. But with that, like, I absolutely love this bike. It's always an absolute blast to ride, which hopefully that is why most of you guys are riding. Okay, let's do some pros and cons. Let's start with the cons first. Right away, gotta say this bike just is not quite as capable as I kind of expected it to be from what I heard and all that stuff. So with that, also it gets pretty unsettled pretty easy on some faster, like chunkier stuff or steep stuff. But with that, the pros, first off, you've got to talk value. This bike, Transition, has absolute killer builds and killer prices to go with it. $6,500, you get a full X01 build, RockShox ultimate suspension front and rear, carbon frame, super lightweight as well. So that is an absolute crazy pro. And then it is very playful. It's a very, I would say, active bike. Also, the pro, like I talked earlier about, it really just makes you want to get out and ride. Like I always say, like, man, it really makes you want to get out and do longer miles, longer days on the bike, and I am 100% for that. I think that is super cool, and I really appreciate a bike like that. With that being said, I also like a bike that is a little bit more comfortable on all those descents that you're climbing to go get to. So it's a kind of a mix. I'm kind of torn between this bike. I love it, but I also wish it was just something a little bit different, which I love bikes. As you guys can tell on my videos, I really don't have many bad things to say about mini bikes, but I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that this wasn't a more downhill oriented bike. It can be in the right terrain, like the Boise foothills where I live, but I also come out here to the Eagle Bike Park. I go to Bogus. I go into the mountains and go ride some chunkier stuff. And with doing that, there's just no way I could have this be my only bike for all that, which is such a bummer. But hopefully Transition comes out with a new 130, 140 travel bike. That'd be rad. They used to have a Smuggler, which was a 120, 140. I'm assuming if they do anything, they will do a 130, 140 bike, because that's kind of where they are lacking. But anyways, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Yes, I love this bike. Am I gonna keep it forever or for an entire year? Probably not, just because it isn't the most confident bike on the descent. But man, the climb is absolutely amazing. So it just, if that's the bike you want, this is 100% the bike for you. With that, like this video, leave some comments down below. good or bad. I know it's not going to be what some people want to hear, but that's my thoughts. Every review is going to be different, and every reviewer is a little different. But then subscribe to my channel if you did like this video, or even if you didn't and you just want to see everything else that I'm doing that maybe I am on your side on. But anyways, get out and ride.